Bolivia's MAS party celebrates the election victory. Guinea's President Alpha Conde is re-elected for a third term. And Hamas rejects the normalization of ties between Israel and Sudan. Hello, welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is from the South. With 100% of the ballots counted in Bolivia's general elections, the movement towards socialism officially secured a landslide victory. According to Bolivia's Supreme Electoral Court, the MAS party gained 55.10% of the votes, which represents over 3.3 million ballots. Citizen Community Alliance has 28.83%, which is 1.7 million of the ballots, securing a second place. We Believe Coalition gained 14% of the votes. The final count confirms Luis Arce as president-elect of Bolivia and his running mate David Choquehuanca as vice president-elect. On Friday, Bolivia's Supreme Electoral Tribunal announced the victory of the MAS party in the elections held on Sunday.
Asimismo, hoy
Today, the Supreme Electoral Court declares Luis Arce Catacora as president-elect and David Choquehuanca as vice president-elect. The results of the elections have been acknowledged by the contestants in a gesture that honors and exalts them and are endorsed by the international community that deployed observation missions which evaluated the elections, taking into account the standards of electoral integrity accepted by the local observation platforms and the society.
The president of Bolivia's Supreme Electoral Tribunal rejected fake news aimed to discredit the vote count, saying that there were no irregularities during the electoral process.
En ese sentido, ciertos intentos
In this regard, certain attempts to stain the results of the process or the computation through false, distorted, or misleading news do not harm the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, which is sufficiently accredited by technical and neutral bodies, such as international missions with solid experience. On the other hand, vain denunciations do affect the democratic essence that requires admitting an outcome even when it is contrary to personal wishes.
And the MAS party and its followers are celebrating the electoral win. On Saturday, citizens in El Alto took to the streets to celebrate the victory with cultural events. Other political parties and social movements also joined the events. Arce is expected to speak to his followers after 5 days of the electoral results. The MAS party candidate is expected to take office on November 8th, following a year since the coup against President Evo Morales. For more, we turn to our correspondent Camila Escalante in the city of El Alto.
The fifth consecutive MAS victory in 15 years and the restoration of democracy and return to constitutionality and legitimacy in Bolivia is being celebrated here today by tens of thousands on Avenida Cívica in El Alto. This follows the declaration by the Electoral Authority last night that Bolivians elected the movement towards socialism's candidate, Lucho y David, in a majority vote, giving this post-coup government a strong mandate. They'll be sworn in on November 8th. It's important to recall that the regime has spent 10 months since January persecuting and trying to jail leaders of the MAS and ban them from standing in these elections. This 55% vote is the reason why a media terror campaign of hate and fear, where the majority of outlets are controlled by the wealthy elites, was fought and won by the organized working class, who refused to adopt the perverse views of the neoliberal U.S.-backed regime. Bolivia is an example for the rest of the continent and world of how to defeat imperialist attacks.
That was a correspondent Camila Escalante in Bolivia. And Chileans are preparing for a historic day on October 25th, when the country will vote on a referendum on whether to change the country's dictatorship-era constitution. More than 14.8 million Chileans are eligible to vote on Sunday, and several polls show that at least 70% favor drafting a new constitution. If approved, it will take more than a year to finish writing the new text. This was one of the main demands of the nationwide protest movement, which began last October. The Peruvian Congress has decided to postpone an impeachment bid against President Martín Vizcarra until November. Peruvian lawmakers are set to debate on the motion in the next session of Parliament, which is scheduled for November 4th. The motion, signed by lawmakers from 4 parties, accuses the president of receiving bribes and lying repeatedly to the country about the allegations. It seeks his ouster on the grounds of permanent moral incapacity. Peruvian Congress rejected the first motion of vacancy presented against Vizcarra in September, which was motivated by the irregular hiring of a singer as an advisor to the Ministry of Culture. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro held a meeting with the General Staff of the Armed Forces and denounced what he said were plans of destabilization by the Colombian government.
Hemos tenido una reunión de trabajo.
We have had a very productive, favorable, important working meeting to review all the plans, to review Plan number 76, the Republic Plan, all the plans for the development of the weapon systems, all the intelligence plans, counterintelligence and protection of the border with Colombia, in order to be aware of and prepared for the aggressions of Iván Duque, who from Colombia is preparing thousands of mercenaries to attack the military posts on the border, to attack our country. We must be prepared, ready and willing to reject any armed incursion, any aggression by the Colombian government of Iván Duque, the paramilitary, the mass murderer of Colombian people.
President Maduro also announced the launch of the country's Scientific and Technological Military Council.
We are going to activate in full force the Scientific and Technological Military Council that is going to give Venezuela the independence of its weapon system. Venezuela installs its Scientific Military Technological Council with the advice and aid of Russia, China, Iran, and many other fraternal countries of the world.
Venezuela's government has received 340,000 antigen-based tests and 35 medical equipments handed by the Pan American Health Organization to speed up the diagnosis period of possible new COVID-19 cases. The organization explained that the objective is to reduce the time of diagnosis so that newly infected people receive medical assistance in a faster and more efficient way. Also, the health body said the new tests will also be able to detect asymptomatic patients, with results being ready in about 30 minutes. Venezuelan health authorities estimate with these rapid tests, they can analyze around 4,000 samples every day. In Colombia, the Truth, Coexistence and Non-Repetition Commission held its 6th meeting regarding the truth of indigenous people living at risk of physical and cultural extermination. The meeting was aimed at exposing the social conditions in which Colombian indigenous communities are living after the signing of the 2016 peace accords. The Commission also denounced the assassination of at least 89 indigenous people during this year, as well as the forced internal displacements. They also called on the Colombian government to put an end to the increasing violence that threatens at least 115 indigenous communities. In other news, Guinea's President Alpha Conde has been re-elected for a 3rd term. The country's Independent Electoral Commission released preliminary results indicating a 59.49% win for Conde. Opposition leader Celo Dalein Diallo, who was Conde's main rival, received 33.5% of the vote. However, opposition supporters have complained about irregularities and vowed to challenge the results in court. But the government insists that the electoral process was fair.
In accordance with Article 41, Paragraph 2 of the Constitution, which stipulates the election of the President of the Republic is achieved through an absolute majority from the votes cast. The candidate having received the highest number of votes is declared the winner. Consequently, the candidate candidate Professor Alpha Conde of the Rally of the Guinean Peoples is declared elected in the first round of the presidential election with 59.49%.
Egyptians have voted in the first stage of the country's parliamentary elections. About 63 million voters are expected to cast their ballots for the election of 568 lawmakers in the lower house. Egypt's parliamentary elections will be held in two phases. The first, covering 14 provinces on Saturday and Sunday, while the second will take place on November 7th and 8th and will cover 13 provinces, including the capital, Cairo. The new parliament is the second to convene under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who came into power in 2014 after the ousting of former leader Mohamed Morsi.
The message I want to deliver through my participation is that I want to see something new happening. During the last period, there were no services, so hopefully this might change for the better.
Cameroon authorities have arrested 4 Ivory smugglers attempted to transport nearly 120 elephant tusks through the country's southern border. The group had trafficked nearly 675 kilograms of the illicit cargo from neighboring Gabon, which is home to more than half of Africa's remaining forest elephants. It was the biggest ivory seizure in the West African nation in 5 years. The global trade in elephant ivory has been outlawed since 1989, after the animal population dropped from millions in the mid-20th century to about 600,000 by the end of that decade.
As you know, we are in a border region and cross-border criminality is very high generally in this zone. So with the relevant officials, we have carried out this special mission to search and track contraband wherever it occurs. And this is the result, as you can see with this ivory tusk.
Libya's 2 rival factions have signed a permanent ceasefire agreement after 5 days of talks at the United Nations. The UN hailed the move as a historic moment. The UN's special envoy to Libya, Stephanie Williams, said both parties agreed to withdraw all military units from the front lines and also discharge all mercenaries and foreign fighters from Libyan territories. They also agreed to establish a mechanism to jointly monitor the implementation of the agreement. However, both sides continue to accuse each other of supporting terrorist groups. And the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Gutteres welcomed the ceasefire agreement reached by Libyan representatives, while calling on all stakeholders and regional actors to conduct its implementation without delay.
I appeal to all stakeholders and regional actors to respect the provisions of the ceasefire agreement and ensure its implementation without delay. And I call on the international community to support Libyans in implementing the ceasefire and in bringing an end to the conflict. This includes ensuring the full and unconditional respect for the Security Council arms embargo. And I urge the Libyan parties to maintain the current momentum and show the same determination in reaching a political solution to the conflict, resolving economic issues, and addressing the humanitarian situation.
We have more stories coming up. Stay with us. Let's continue with news. Palestinian nationalist organization Hamas has condemned the normalization of ties between Israel and Sudan. Hamas spokesman Hassem Qassem described the deal announced by U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday as a political sin. The president of Palestine, Mahmoud Abbas, based in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, joined the condemnation. Sudan is the 3rd Arab country since August to announce normalization of ties with Israel after the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain.
Announcing the normalization of relations between the Sudan and the occupying state is a major political sin, and it is condemned, as it harms the Palestinian cause and the interests of the Palestinian people, and encourages the occupation to commit more crimes.
The Seychelles Islands has also gone to the polls for presidential and parliamentary elections. The country's incumbent president, Danny Faure, has expressed confidence of being re-elected. He faces two rivals, with the main one being the Anglican priest, Wabel Ramkalawan, who is taking his sixth shot at the presidency. The other is Alain Saint-Eng, who was in the opposition before joining the government as tourism minister, but is now running under the flag of a new party, One Seychelles. As the nation is made up of various islands, the elections will take 3 days to complete.
So far, things have been going on very smoothly. I see people are able to express their vote, and so all in all, the electoral process itself is going smoothly, and I commend the Electoral Commission for the work being done so far. I see the devotion of all the electoral officers, and furthermore the commitment of all political parties.
On Friday, the Secretary General of the World Health Organization warned of a COVID-19 critical moment, as a large number of countries have exponential increases in cases.
We are at a critical juncture in this pandemic, particularly in the Northern Hemisphere. The next few months are going to be very tough, and some countries are on a dangerous track. Too many countries are seeing an exponential increase in cases, and that's now leading to hospitals and ICU running close or above capacity, and we're still only in October. We urge leaders to take immediate action to prevent further unnecessary deaths, essential health services from collapsing, and schools shutting again. As I said it in February, and I'm repeating it today, this is not a drill.
Turkish authorities confirmed 2,165 new COVID-19 cases on Friday. The total number of confirmed cases now stands at over 357,000 since the outbreak began. The death toll reached more than 9,600. And Turkish health authorities also said that close to 1,500 patients were given the all clear in the last 24 hours, pushing the total number of recoveries to over 300,000. Residents in the Spanish capital, Madrid, have reacted to the latest government's COVID-19 restrictions. Health authorities said the total number of confirmed cases already surpasses 1 million around the country.
In Spain, measures are very different in each region. In Madrid, I feel they are insufficient because if you see the infection's evolution, it seems that the necessary steps are not being done. So I wish there would be a bit more harmony and a bit more responsibility.
Maybe it wasn't the moment to take this measure. Maybe we should have taken it a long time ago, or should have taken others, such as restrict the number of people in public transport, or people that keep going to work and being in places that maybe are not adapted to have so many people.
As situation is changing a lot, I don't know if people are maybe even taking advantage in case they have to confine themselves again later. So I don't know if these measures are encouraging people to go out more or limiting. It is weird, complicated.
All these restraints they are imposing to us in a long term, I feel that in a certain way it's burdened me a bit. It's being now a bit heavy.
On Friday, authorities in Portugal passed a law that enforces the use of face masks in public spaces whenever the 2-meter distance rule cannot be observed. The decision comes after health authorities reported the highest ever new COVID-19 daily infections.
The epidemiological situation that our country is facing is worsening in a very troubled way. Just yesterday, we have surpassed for the first time the 3,000 daily cases. At this moment, we must take not a calculated approach of not doing anything and wait and see, but rather the position of being on the forefront of the political fight against the pandemic. That is why we presented today a proposal of mandatory mask use outdoors in public spaces whenever social distancing is not possible and as part of a global approach of containing the outbreak.
According to a poll released by the U.S. Elections Project, over 50 million people have already cast their ballots in early voting, just less than 2 weeks until Election Day. The polls pointed out that over 35 million U.S. citizens have cast their vote by mail, while more than 15 million have attended the polling stations. Several experts predict a historic turnout rate. 85 million people could vote before November 3rd, with 150 million voting in total, which would represent an eligible voter turnout rate of more than 62%. Large demonstrations erupted in Hungary's capital, Budapest, on Friday to protest the government's decision, which they claim undermines academic freedom. Demonstrators held up torches and banners reading "Free Country, Free University, and Art is Free," to reject the government's decision to transfer the control of Hungary's University of Theatre and Film Arts to a private foundation, including the appointment of a new board. A group of students has been barricaded inside the university since September 1st, claiming that a government-appointed board will deprive the school of its autonomy, while a number of top professors have resigned in protest of the government's move. The institution, which has nurtured many of Hungary's leading directors and filmmakers, has been caught up in a cultural war, as Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban seeks to put an end to what authorities believe is the domination of the arts by liberals.
It's very cruel how they treat this university, and I have never seen anything like this happening in Central Europe, and it is disturbing, to be honest. So that's why I'm here, because I find this disturbing. I can't find any other words for it.
We want quality education. However, this is only possible in autonomous institutions. It is not guaranteed by the ruling power. There is a common set of rules concerning universities in Europe, which has developed over the centuries, and the cornerstone of these rules is institutional autonomy. This is exactly what the government is trying to take away.
With that, we end this news brief. But remember, you can read all of our stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to follow us on social media. Until next time.